Silence swallowed the October morning like the lid of a coffin being sealed. Sofia Harper stood at the edge of Nico Calabrese's marble driveway, her breath visible in sharp gasps against the bitter wind. 9:47 a.m. The cold cut through her coat like a blade wrapped in ice. Dead leaves skittered across the white stone in patterns that made no sense, and somewhere deep in her chest, her heart hammered against her ribs with the rhythm of warning. She had been working at Salvatore's market for 8 months. 8 months of double shifts, of eating the bruised fruit customers rejected, of counting coins in the bathroom during her lunch break to see if she could afford gas to pick up her children from school. 8 months of standing in a walk-in freezer for 12 hours straight, her calloused fingers turning numb as she restocked shelves, her mind doing the mathematics of survival that never added up. $52 in the bank. $34 in her coat pocket. That was everything. That was all that stood between her and complete erasure. The eviction notice had arrived on a Tuesday. $85,000. Due in 14 days. The converted garage on Figueroa Street where she slept on a mattress without sheets, where her daughters, Mia aged 7 and little Rosa aged 5, shared a cot in the corner, where the ceiling leaked when it rained and the heating system made sounds like something dying slowly. $85,000 she did not have. Would never have. Could not even imagine having. That morning, before sunrise, before her shift, she had found the wallet. It was half buried in wet leaves outside the market's delivery entrance, leather the color of burnt chocolate, soft as skin. She should have left it. Should have reported it to the store manager, collected whatever small reward he might have offered. But her hands had already opened it before her mind caught up with her body's decisions. Inside was a photograph. A woman with dark eyes that held kindness the way a container holds water. Dark hair swept back from her face, and a smile so tender it made Sofia's throat tight. On the back, in gold embossing, a name, Nico Calabrese. Below it, an address in the hills above Los Angeles. Her co-worker Jasmine, when Sofia mentioned it in hushed tones, had gone pale. "Do not say that name," she whispered. "Do not even think it if you can help it. That is a man who answers to no one." But Sofia had already traced the address. Already ridden the bus across the city on her lunch break, the torn leather wallet burning in her hands like a coal. Already walked up a driveway that stretched longer than her entire neighborhood block, marble so white it seemed to glow, and iron gates wrought in patterns that cost more than her daughters had eaten in a week. Armed guards watched from the shadows. Black suits hanging loose over muscular frames. Eyes that had seen things that had hollowed them out from the inside. She had stood there, trembling like a leaf in November wind, and pressed the intercom button. Now, 3 weeks later, she stood at the exact same gates again. This time, she was not returning a wallet. A black sedan turned onto the driveway, moving fast. Wrong angle. Wrong speed. The October air froze in her lungs. She had returned because Nico Calabrese had made her an offer. Not a request. An offer. He wanted to see her again, he had said into the phone, his voice deep and solid like an oath. She would come to his home. He would provide protection. He would ensure that Douglas Hale, her ex-boyfriend, the man with connections to corrupt police officers, the man who had filed false reports claiming she was unstable, that man would be handled. She should not have believed him. She should have hung up the phone and prayed. But Emma had been admitted to the hospital 2 days ago. Nico's daughter. 6 years old. Oxygen tubes running from her small nose, her breathing labored and wet, the doctors using words like pneumonia and compromised immune system. The little girl who had asked, from her hospital bed, if the nice grocery store lady was coming to visit again. Sofia had told her daughter Mia that she was going to work. She had not told her she was going to a mansion in the hills to see a Mafia boss's dying child. The black sedan accelerated. She saw it happen in fragments. A nurse wheeling Emma toward a medical van, the little girl's tiny body dwarfed by hospital blankets, her oxygen tubes trailing behind her like poison threads. A window rolling down on the sedan. The slow, deliberate emergence of a gun barrel. Time did something strange then, something like stretching, like pulling taffy, and Sofia understood in that frozen moment that someone was trying to kill this child. Her body moved before her mind could stop it. She ran forward. She raised her arms. She positioned herself between the child and the open window like a shield woven from nothing but desperation and the memory of her own daughter's 7-year-old face. For thunderclaps split the morning open. For impacts like hammers striking her chest, her shoulder, her hip, her leg. The pain was not sharp. It was vast and consuming, like being submerged in water that tasted like copper and fire. She hit the marble driveway. Her blood spread across the white stone in patterns that looked almost artistic in the dry cold. The last thing she saw before the darkness came was Nico Calabrese dropping to his knees beside her, his dark eyes wider than she had ever seen them, his hand shaking in a way that terrified her more than the bullets had. In 15 years of absolute dominion, Marco Enzo and Luca had never seen their boss like this. They had never seen him kneel. They had never seen his voice crack when he screamed for the medic. They had never seen fear on his face, not even when his own brother had tried to betray him, not even when the federal agents had circled with warrants. But what Sofia did not know, as consciousness slipped away like water through her fingers, was that this moment would pull apart 3 separate conspiracies. This moment would expose his brother's widow, Margaret Harrington, as the architect of a plot designed not just to kill an innocent child, but to destroy Nico Calabrese completely. This moment would force a man who had spent his entire life controlling everything to choose between his empire and one woman who had chosen a stranger's child over her own safety. The sirens began to wail then, cutting through the October morning like a blade through silence. Before we continue, drop a like if you feel the weight of this moment. Share this story with someone who understands what it means to choose another's life over your own. Subscribe so you don't miss what happens when the most dangerous man in Los Angeles realizes he is not the one in control anymore. Now, let us go back. Let us go back 3 weeks, to the morning everything changed, to a moment when Sofia Harper had no idea who Nico Calabrese was beyond a name whispered in fear in the break room of a grocery store that smelled like rotting fruit and cleaning chemicals. It was early morning. 6:30 a.m. The kind of darkness that never quite becomes dawn in Los Angeles, just shifts from black to gray to something like blue if you squint. Sofia stood in the walk-in freezer at Salvatore's market, her breath visible, her fingers working to stack boxes of frozen vegetables that felt heavier every single day. Her manager, a man named Roberto with a permanent stain on his shirt and breath that smelled like cigarettes, had scheduled her for a double shift. 12 hours. Minimum wage. He never paid overtime. He said it was company policy. The company was him, alone, a man with a cash register and no mercy. She counted the hours until she could leave to pick up her daughters from school. The aftercare program cost $18 a day. She made $92 a shift if she was lucky. After rent, $300 for a converted garage that flooded, after food, after the car payment, after the insurance, after everything, there was almost nothing left. $34 in her pocket. That was all. She was thinking about that number when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I would like to thank you in person. My daughter has asked about you. Please come to the address below. I am Nico Calabrese. Her stomach had gone very still. That night, after closing, after driving home in a car that made sounds it should not make, after kissing her daughters' foreheads as they slept, she had sat at the kitchen table and Googled the name. What came back made her understand why Jasmine had gone pale. Articles that were vague but heavy with implication. A shooting in Boyle Heights that the police had never solved. A federal investigation that had gone nowhere. A businessman, the articles called him, though the word businessman seemed to be written in a code she did not fully understand. But there was one article that changed everything. A photograph of Nico Calabrese at a charity gala, and beside him a woman with dark eyes and that tender smile. The caption said, Nico Calabrese and his wife Elena at the Children's Hospital Foundation. Their daughter Emma was recently treated for pneumonia. The article was dated 18 months ago. Sofia had clicked on another article. And another. She learned that Elena Calabrese had died 2 years ago. That little Emma, now 6, had been in and out of hospitals her entire life. That Nico Calabrese had doubled his charitable donations to the children's hospital every year since his wife's death, as if money could somehow rewrite the past tense back into present tense. She had understood then why he wanted to see her. Not gratitude. Understanding. Recognition of something. 14 days until the eviction. $85,000 she did not have. 3 weeks later, standing on marble that cost more than her rent, pressing an intercom button with a finger that shook, she had made a decision. She would go. Whatever this was, whatever Nico Calabrese wanted, she would go. Because in her pocket was a child's first pair of shoes, tiny and pink and worn at the heel, the shoes her daughter Rosa had worn when she learned to walk, the shoes Sofia had kept even after they no longer fit, kept them because they were the only beautiful thing from a time when beautiful things still seemed possible. And if this man could help her keep her daughters from losing their home, then family was not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. The wind picked up as the black gates opened before her. 3 weeks before Sofia Harper walked up that marble driveway, she stood in front of a bathroom mirror that had not been cleaned in 6 days, counting the money in her coat pocket like a prayer that had already been answered and forgotten. $34. That was all. $34.32 after she had paid for her son Marcus's asthma medication, the inhaler that cost more than food, the medication that kept him breathing through the nights when the converted garage apartment where they lived turned cold and damp. The walls sweated in October. The heater worked on only one setting, high, bleeding money into the landlord's pocket like a wound that would not close. She pressed the bills flat against her palm. Crumpled. Soft from being folded and unfolded. $1.20, $1.10, for ones, and 32 cents in coins that clinked like a tiny bell announcing her failure. Marcus was 6. Rosa was 4. They shared a mattress in the corner of the main room because she could not afford 2 beds, and the nights were long when you listened to a child breathing and counted every breath like a blessing you might lose. The eviction notice was still taped to the door. She had stopped reading it after the first line, notice to vacate. Her landlord had highlighted the date in yellow marker. 14 days. 2 weeks to find $85,000 she did not possess, would never possess, could not even conceive of possessing in any lifetime that made mathematical sense. She pulled on her coat. The zipper had broken 3 months ago. She tied it closed with a piece of string that had once wrapped around a package of Christmas decorations she could not afford to buy again this year. The morning was gray. Los Angeles in October pretended that winter was coming, but it was only pretending. The wind blew anyway, cutting through the fabric of her coat like it was made of nothing. She walked Marcus and Rosa to school, their hands in hers, their shoes worn at the heel from walking everywhere because she had no car, because the car had been repossessed 8 months ago when she missed 3 payments trying to stay ahead of Douglas's mounting debts, his gambling, his rage, his hands that left marks in places clothes covered. Rosa looked down at her feet as they walked. "Mama, why can't I have new shoes?" Her daughter's voice was small. For years old and already understanding what it meant when something wore through at the heel. Sofia's throat closed. She kept walking. "Soon, baby. Very soon. When is soon?" "Soon. That's what soon means. It comes after now." Rosa accepted this because she was 4 and the logic of her mother was the only logic she had ever known. But Sofia felt something inside her chest fracture, like a plate spinning on a stick, wobbling faster and faster toward the inevitable crash. She dropped them at school, the public school that still accepted them, still took her children, though Sofia had received a notice last week that the district was investigating her housing situation, that if the children's living conditions did not improve, the state might need to get involved. Family services. A phrase that sounded gentle until you understood what it meant. Until you understood that Douglas had filed a report calling her unstable, unfit, dangerous. That he had friends in the police department who would corroborate whatever he said. The school doors closed behind them. Sofia turned back toward the bus stop, walking against the wind. She worked at Martinez's grocery on Whittier Boulevard, double shifts, 6 days a week. The pay was minimum wage. The tips were worse. People who came to a grocery store at 2 in the morning buying cheap whiskey and processed cheese did not think about leaving money for the cashier. They thought about getting home, about oblivion, about whatever they were running from or running toward. The bus was late. It was always late. Sofia waited in the cold, her breath visible like something dying in the air in front of her. A black car pulled up to the curb near the bus stop. Tinted windows. New. Expensive in a way that made her nervous just looking at it. The window rolled down. Douglas Hale leaned out, grinning like a wolf that had found something to hunt. He was handsome in the way that made women stupid. Dark hair, broad shoulders, a jaw that looked like it had been drawn by an artist. He wore a leather jacket that cost more than a month of her rent. His watch caught the grey morning light. Sofia. He said her name like it was a curse. That's a long walk from school. I followed you. Her stomach dropped like she had stepped off a cliff. Don't come near me. Her voice was steady. She had practiced this voice in the mirror. The voice of a woman who was not afraid, even though the fear was a living thing in her chest, clawing. Don't come near you. He laughed. I am the father of your children, Sofia. We are still married. Well, separated. But the divorce isn't final yet, is it? I checked. Talk to a lawyer. You never filed the paperwork. She had not filed it because it cost $800 she did not have. The restraining order. The restraining order. He stepped out of the car. He was tall. He blocked out the grey sky. That order was filed by a woman who works 2 jobs and lives in a garage. That order is a piece of paper. I know people, Sofia. I know cops. I know judges. I know social workers. One word from me and those kids disappear into the system. Foster care. Wards of the state. You think you're protecting them by running? You're making it worse. He grabbed her arm. His fingers dug into the fabric of her coat, into the bone underneath. You think you can hide from me? You think you can take my children? They are my children. They are my children. They carry my blood. He pulled her closer. His breath smelled like cigarettes and cologne. You want to keep them? You want to stay in the state? Then you stop acting like this. You come home. You remember who you married. You remember that I own you. A woman walked past, pushing a stroller. She looked at Sofia. Sofia looked back with a face that said nothing was wrong, everything was fine, this was just a conversation between people who loved each other. The woman kept walking. Douglas released her arm. He smiled. It was the smile that had made her love him, once. Before love became a cage. 14 days, he said. Your landlord called me. We had drinks. He mentioned the eviction. I told him I might be able to help. Might. If you come home. He got back in the car. The window rolled up. The black car pulled away from the curb, smooth and silent, and she was standing alone on the sidewalk again, her arm throbbing where his fingers had been, counting the hours until she had to pick them up from school and pretend that everything was normal, that Mama wasn't terrified, that the man who knew cops was not tightening his fist around her life. The bus arrived. She boarded it without looking back. At Martinez's grocery, the fluorescent lights hummed like a dying animal. The linoleum floor was sticky. Nothing about this place was clean, but it paid, barely, and the owner did not ask questions about her past or her future. He only cared that she showed up for her shifts and that she did not steal. Sofia worked the early shift, for in the morning until noon. Then she went home for 2 hours and returned at 2 in the afternoon for the closing shift, working until midnight. 12 hours apart from her children, for hours with them, and the remaining 8 hours were supposed to be sleep, though sleep had become something she did in the cracks between moments, shallow and thin like paper. It was during the morning shift, while the city still believed that night was possible, that she found the wallet. The dumpsters behind the store were filled with the previous day's waste. Expired milk, rotten vegetables, plastic packaging, the refuse of people who could afford to throw things away. During her break, Sofia walked back there like she always did, pulling things out of the trash. A loaf of bread that had been discarded because one corner was green with mold. An apple with a bruise. A container of yogurt that would expire in 3 days, still sealed. This was her lunch most days. This was how she fed herself so that the $34 could feed her children instead. She was crouching in front of the dumpster, reaching for a package of chicken that had fallen out of a bag when she saw something dark in the wet leaves piled against the back wall. Leather. A wallet, half buried in October leaves that had turned brown and slick with rain. She picked it up. It was expensive. She could tell from the weight of it, the quality of the leather. Inside were credit cards, a driver's license with a photograph of a man with dark eyes and a scar running from his eye to his cheekbone, and $800 in cash. $800. She could pay for Marcus's medication for 2 months. She could buy Rosa new shoes. She could buy groceries that did not come from the trash. She could send both of them to school with lunch instead of the homemade sandwich that sat in her bag getting cold. She stood up, the wallet in her hands, and thought about what kind of person she was. The kind of person who could be Douglas Hale. The kind of person who took what was not hers and called it survival. Or the kind of person who returned it. Her coworker Maria found her standing there, staring at the wallet. "What is that?" Maria asked. Sofia opened it. She showed her the name embossed in gold on the leather. Nico Calabrese. Maria's face went white. Actually white, the color draining from her skin like someone had pulled a plug. "Close that." Maria's voice was urgent. "Put it down." "Why?" "I'm going to return it." "You are not." Maria took the wallet from her hands and closed it. "That name." "Sofia. That is not a name you want to know. That is not a name you say out loud. That is a name people whisper, and only then when they are sure no one is listening." He lost his wallet. "I found it. I will return it." "You will not." Maria looked around like the air itself might be listening. That man is not someone you return things to. That man is someone who takes things from people, and when you try to take them back, you disappear. But Sofia had already made the decision before Maria spoke. She traced the address from the driver's license. She memorized it. And when her shift ended and she had 5 minutes to make the bus that would get her back to pick up her children, she instead rode a different bus, one that went east, one that left the grocery store neighborhood and climbed upward into hills where the houses became mansions, where the streets were clean, where the people had never had to choose between medication and food because the choice had never existed for them. The bus groaned up a steep hill. The windows were spotted with rain that had begun to fall, the October wind sharpening into something with teeth. Sofia sat near the back, the wallet in her pocket, feeling it like a stone against her ribs. The driver called out the stops. Grand Boulevard. Elm Street. And finally, the address she had memorized, an iron gate at the top of a private drive, black and tall and beautiful in the way that things designed to keep people out are always beautiful. She pulled the cord. The bus stopped. She got off into the rain. The gate was perhaps 50 feet away. Beyond it, a marble driveway curved out of sight, disappearing into trees that had been planted before she was born, before her mother was born, before any of the women in her family had been born into a world that looked like this one. Armed guards stood in the shadows of the brick pillars that flanked the gate. She could see them watching her, their hands resting on their hips where their weapons were. She walked forward anyway, the wallet in her coat pocket, the rain cutting through her broken zipper. One of the guards stepped forward. "This is private property. I found something that belongs to the owner." Her voice was steady. She had learned how to make her voice steady. "I came to return it." The guard did not move. She pressed the intercom button beside the gate. Her finger shook. Nothing happened. She pressed it again. Then, finally, a voice came through the speaker. Calm. Controlled. The voice of someone who was not used to having to repeat himself. State your business. I found a wallet. It belongs to Nico Calabrese. I have come to return it. Silence. Long enough that she thought she had made a mistake, that they would send her away, that she would have to go back to the grocery store and continue living in the converted garage with 2 children and a man who knew how to destroy her. Then the gate began to move. It swung inward, revealing the marble driveway, and on that marble, walking toward her with his coat flapping in the October wind like a bird trying to escape, was a man with dark eyes and a scar running from his eye to his cheekbone, and Sofia understood, in the moment before he spoke, that something fundamental in her life had just shifted, that she had stepped through a door that would not let her back out into the world she had known before. The marble beneath Sofia's feet felt cold even through the soles of her worn shoes as Nico Calabrese walked toward her, his dark coat moving like water in the October wind. Behind him, 2 men in tailored charcoal suits stepped into the doorway, Enzo, broad-shouldered and watchful, and Luca, younger, his hand instinctively moving toward his hip before he caught himself. Neither had ever seen their boss answer his own door. Nico stopped 3 feet from her, close enough that she could see the scar running from his eye to his cheekbone, a thin line of silver against olive skin. His dark eyes were the color of winter water, and they moved across her face with the precision of someone cataloging information. He saw the broken zipper on her coat. The grocery store uniform just visible beneath it, faded green with a name tag that read Sofia. The trembling in her hands as she extended the wallet. "This belongs to you," she said. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it did not shake. "I found it outside the grocery store on 7th Avenue. 3 days ago. I have been trying to find the address." The phone book at the library had a listing for Calabrese Holdings. "I took the bus here during my lunch break. I hope that was not a problem." She was talking too much. Adrenaline made people talk. He knew this. Nico took the wallet. His fingers were long, his nails clean, his hands the hands of someone who did not do his own violence. He opened it slowly. She saw the moment he found the photograph, his jaw tightened imperceptibly, the kind of movement only someone watching very carefully would notice. A woman with dark eyes. A tender smile. A photograph of someone deeply loved and deeply lost. "The cash inside," he said. His voice was rough gravel dragged over stone. "You could have kept it." "I know. Why did you not?" Sofia straightened her shoulders. This was the moment she had rehearsed 100 times on the bus ride across the city, standing in the cold grocery store break room, lying awake in the dark garage listening to her children sleep. This was the only question that mattered. "Because it was not mine," she said simply. "And someone showed me kindness once when I had nothing. I am still paying that forward." Enzo's breath caught. Luca looked away. In 15 years of working for Nico Calabrese, they had never heard him respond to anything with the expression that crossed his face now, a flicker of something that might have been grief, or might have been recognition, or might have been both. "Your name," Nico said. "Sofia. Sofia Harper." "How long did you work to find me, Sofia Harper?" 2 days. I asked at the library, at the bus station. I walked the neighborhood. Your address was on the business listing. I came 3 miles from my apartment because I do not have another bus fare right now." He watched her with an intensity that made her want to disappear into herself. She had learned how to make herself small. It was a skill she had perfected over years of invisibility, working grocery store shifts where customers looked through her, living in a converted garage where neighbors pretended she did not exist, raising 2 children alone while the world agreed she was failing. "And you came all this way on foot," he said. It was not a question. "Yes." The scar on his face seemed to deepen when he moved, when he finally spoke again. "Come inside. It is cold. You should warm yourself before the journey back." The mansion swallowed her whole. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across marble floors. Oil paintings of stern-faced men hung in frames that cost more than her year's salary. Enzo and Luca exchanged a glance that said everything. Their boss, inviting a stranger inside. Their boss, offering hospitality to someone with $34 crumpled in her pocket and a grocery store uniform beneath her broken coat. Nico brought her to a sitting room. Furniture upholstered in cream silk, windows overlooking gardens that rolled toward Los Angeles below them. She perched on the edge of a chair worth more than her annual salary, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles turned white. "I have sent someone to investigate your situation," Nico said. He was not asking permission to have done this. It was already done. This was how power worked. It moved first and asked questions never. Sofia felt her body stiffen. "You investigated me. I protect what is mine. You did me a service. That makes you mine to protect." His logic was absolute, carved from the stone of a world she did not belong to. She should have been terrified. Instead, she felt something she had not felt in 3 years, the first fragile spark of hope. "There is a man," Nico continued. "Douglas Hale. He comes to your apartment. He frightens your children. He has filed reports with the police claiming you are unstable. These reports were filed by officers who work for him. I can make him understand the cost of continuing." "I do not want anyone hurt," Sofia said immediately. The thought of violence done in her name made her stomach turn. "I just want him to stop. I just want my children to be safe. Then I will make him understand." Nico opened a folder on the side table. Numbers. Bank statements. Photographs. Your debt. $85,000. Medical bills from your daughter's emergency surgery. Lawyer fees. Court costs. It will take you 40 years to pay this at your current wage. I will pay it. Sofia stood to leave. This was happening too fast, too much, too impossible. No. I will not be owned by another man. I have spent my entire adult life escaping that. I will not trade one captor for another. It is not ownership. Nico's voice remained even, but something flickered in his eyes, frustration, or perhaps something gentler. It is repayment. You returned something precious to me. Let me return the favor. She turned toward the door. Her hand was on the frame when his voice stopped her. "Why would you help me?" she asked the empty hallway. "I am nobody." The silence that followed was so complete she could hear the grandfather clock in the entrance hall, its tick-tick-tick marking the seconds like a heartbeat. When Nico spoke, his words were soft as ash. "My wife used to say that the measure of a person is what they do when no one is watching. You walked 3 miles in the cold to return a wallet you could have sold. You are not nobody, Sofia Harper." The door to the sitting room opened. A small figure in pale pink pajamas walked through it, trailing oxygen tubes like ribbon streamers. She was 6 years old, with Nico's dark eyes and a smile that did not quite reach them. Her skin had the translucent quality of someone who spent too much time indoors, and she moved slowly, as if each step required calculation. "Papa," the child said. "Who is this?" Sofia's entire body softened. She knelt to the child's level, an instinct as old as motherhood. "Hello, sweetheart. My name is Sofia. What is yours?" "Emma." The girl extended her hand formally, as if she had been taught this gesture by someone who believed in ritual and respect. "That is Mr. Whiskers. He is my rabbit. He does not talk, but he listens very well." Sofia took the stuffed animal gently. It was worn at the seams, loved past its usefulness. She understood immediately that this was not just a toy but a lifeline. "Mr. Whiskers is very handsome." "What is his favorite color?" "Purple." "All the colors are good, but purple is best because it is the color of sad days and happy days both. When I feel sad, I look at purple and it reminds me that happy days come again." 3-beat silence. Then Nico's hand rested on his daughter's shoulder, and Sofia saw in that gesture everything she needed to know. that this man loved this child with the kind of ferocity that could move mountains or destroy cities, and that he was calculating whether Sofia Harper could be trusted near that love. After Emma was taken for her nap by a nurse who appeared silently in the doorway, Nico made his offer in the sitting room again, his voice stripped of all inflection. "I need someone near Emma. 3 days a week. Someone kind. Not a guard or a doctor. Someone who sees her as a child, not a patient. I will pay $2,000 weekly." Sofia's mind spun through the mathematics. $2,000 weekly meant her debt was gone in 6 months. It meant her children could leave the garage. It meant Emma could have tutors, could go to a real school, could breathe air that was not stagnant. But it also meant entering a world of men in suits and guns beneath tailored jackets, of violence whispered in hallways, of becoming entangled with power that moved through Los Angeles like an invisible current. "I need to think," she said. "Take the time you need." Nico walked to the window overlooking the gardens. His reflection in the glass looked like a ghost. "But know that Douglas Hale will be encouraged to leave Los Angeles by the end of the week regardless. Your debt is a choice you can still make. His departure is already decided." Sofia left the mansion with the offer burning in her pocket, with Emma's words about purple and sad days replaying in her mind. She did not see Margaret Harrington in the upstairs hallway, watching from behind a silk curtain, her expression calculating and cold. At Michelangelo's restaurant in Beverly Hills, Margaret sat across from 3 wealthy women whose jewelry cost more than Sofia's children's entire lives. The afternoon light was dry and thin. Champagne sat untouched in crystal flutes. "Nico has brought someone into his home," Margaret said quietly. Her voice had the texture of a knife wrapped in velvet. "A grocery store clerk." Around Emma. One wonders what he is thinking. Whether someone so common can truly understand the delicate situation with a sick child. Whether she might be there for the wrong reasons. The 3 women exchanged glances. Poison worked best when delivered in whispers. Meanwhile, 3 blocks away in a bar called the Foundry, Douglas Hale was drinking his 4th whiskey when the door opened and a man in an unmarked suit sat down beside him without invitation. The man said nothing for a full minute. He simply sat there, breathing, existing, radiating the kind of danger that comes from absolute certainty. "Los Angeles is no longer safe for you," the man said very quietly. "You have 48 hours to be gone, or you will be gone permanently. Do you understand?" Douglas understood. He trembled. He nodded. He finished his drink with hands that would not stop shaking. But what neither Douglas nor Margaret knew was that Sofia Harper was lying awake in the garage at 3 in the morning, holding the tiny white sneakers her daughter had worn when they first escaped. She was whispering promises to shoes that could not hear her, and she was deciding that sometimes you have to walk through fire to reach the other side. Family is not always bound by blood but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives. The October morning tasted like copper and fear. Sofia Harper stood in the marble driveway of the Calabrese mansion, one hand resting on Emma's wheelchair, the other trembling so badly she had to grip the rubber handle to keep it still. The little girl was pale, her oxygen tubes catching the dry sunlight like spun glass. Mr. Whiskers, the stuffed rabbit worn to velvet softness, lay across Emma's lap. Sofia had walked this driveway 17 times in the past 2 weeks. Each time her heart performed the same betrayal, it beat faster, it softened, it forgot to protect itself. The specialist's appointment was routine. That was what everyone said. Just a checkup. Just blood work. Just confirmation that the experimental treatment was working. Just words that meant nothing because nothing about this was routine anymore. 2 weeks had passed since that night in Nico's office when she accepted the position, when she agreed to become Emma's companion, when she crossed a line she could not uncross. 2 weeks of small moments that had rewired her entire body. Coffee appearing at her elbow in the mansion's east wing, still steaming, prepared exactly how she liked it, 2 sugars, a splash of cream that turned it the color of caramel. She had never mentioned this preference. She had watched Nico's face when she noticed, the way his jaw tightened, the way he said nothing at all. I asked Lucia, he had told her finally, when she confronted him. Your daughter mentioned it. I asked because I wanted to know. Her children's school fees had vanished from the outstanding balance. When Sofia received the notification, she had gone directly to Nico's study, her voice sharp with something between gratitude and panic. I cannot accept, she had started, but he interrupted, his tone brooking no argument. You can and you will. Emma's tutor attends the same institution. The arrangement is practical. Nothing more. But it was not practical. It was deliberate. It was the kind of careful attention that unmade her defenses piece by piece. The medical van was already prepared, handicapped accessible, climate-controlled, staffed with 2 nurses who had worked for Nico for years. Enzo stood beside the open doors, his massive frame casting a shadow across the driveway. He had barely spoken to Sofia in the first week, but something had shifted in the past few days. Yesterday, when she had struggled to lift Emma's wheelchair into her own car, he had appeared wordlessly and carried it as though it weighed nothing. When Sofia thanked him, Enzo had nodded once and walked away. But that nod had contained something like acceptance. Luca approached with a thermos of water and a blanket, even though the morning was dry and the air moved without chill. He draped the blanket across Emma's small body with surprising gentleness. The specialist's office is temperature-controlled, he said to Sofia, though he was clearly speaking to the child. We will keep you warm anyway. Some comfort cannot be measured. Emma's hand found Sofia's. The child had stopped asking if Sofia was her mommy, but the questions lived in her eyes every time they were together. Sofia had learned to sit with that question unanswered, had learned that sometimes love did not require definition. She squeezed the small fingers. Ready, sweetheart. Will it hurt? Emma's voice was so small it could fit inside a closed fist. No. Just doctors asking you questions about how you feel. And I will be right beside you the entire time. The black sedan appeared at the end of the driveway at 9:08 a.m. It came too fast. The wrongness registered in Sofia's body first, a tightening in her chest, a primal alarm that predated thought. Her eyes tracked the vehicle as it approached, and something in the way it moved, the angle of its approach, screamed danger. The window lowered. Sofia saw the barrel of the gun before her mind could process what she was seeing. She did not think. Thinking would have frozen her. Instead, her body moved with the clarity of pure instinct. She threw herself forward, her entire frame covering Emma's wheelchair, her arms wrapped around the small child, shielding the girl completely. Her back became a wall between the bullets and the life beneath her. The first shot cracked like thunder. The impact against her right shoulder felt like being struck with a hammer. The second shot caught her ribs, driving the air from her lungs. The third tore through her hip. The fourth found her upper thigh, and she felt something inside her tear apart. She crashed onto the marble beside Emma, her blood spreading across white stone in ribbons, in rivers. Emma was screaming, a sound of pure terror that echoed off the mansion walls. Sofia's voice came out broken. It's okay. It's okay, baby. I'm right here. Nico's roar split the morning open. It was not a word. It was a sound pulled from somewhere primal, somewhere that had not seen light in years. He dropped beside them, his hands moving over Sofia's body, assessing the damage, assessing her mortality with the same clinical precision he would apply to a contract or a threat. His shirt absorbed her blood. His fingers shook. Stay with me, he commanded, and his voice was broken glass wrapped in steel. Sofia. Look at me. Stay with me. Her eyes found his. They were the color of storm clouds, and they contained something that looked like devastation. Emma, Sofia whispered. Her voice came from very far away. Is she? She is safe. You saved her. You saved my daughter. Sofia's vision was narrowing, pulling inward like a photograph being torn from the edges. Good. That's good. Enzo and Luca moved in formation, one shielding Emma, one photographing the retreating sedan with a camera that captured everything, the license plate, the face of the driver, the vehicle's trajectory as it vanished into the Los Angeles traffic. Sirens wailed from 3 blocks away, already approaching because Luca had made the call the moment the gun appeared. The next hours fragmented into sensation. The ambulance. Hands moving her body. Oxygen masks. Questions asked and not answered because she could not form words anymore. The smell of antiseptic and fear. Bright lights that hurt her eyes. Doctors saying things like for bullets removed and miraculous and no permanent organ damage. The word surgery repeated like a prayer that could not save her. Sofia opened her eyes 72 hours later in a room that smelled like flowers and expensive care. Machines beat their soft, rhythmic confirmation that her heart was still beating. Rain fell against the windows, the first rain in 6 weeks, and it arrived precisely when the sky needed to release what it had been holding. A nurse appeared within moments, as though she had been waiting just beyond the doorway. Young, kind-faced, wearing scrubs the color of pale blue sky. "You are awake," the nurse said, and something in her tone suggested she had been worried about this outcome. "My children," Sofia's voice was sandpaper and rust. "Where?" "Safe. They have been here every day. That man, Mr. Calabrese, he arranged everything. The best room in the hospital. Private nurses. Your children have been in the waiting area. They sit with his men, and these men, they are not what you would expect. One of them taught your son card games. The other colored drawings with your daughter." Sofia's eyes flooded with tears that came from a place so deep it felt like drowning. Emma. Nico. Her children in a waiting room, surrounded by killers who played cards and colored with crayons. The door opened. Emma appeared first, moving slowly, carefully, but no longer requiring the wheelchair. The tubes were gone. Behind her came Nico Calabrese, and his face was something Sofia had not seen before. It was raw. Unguarded. Every wall he had built over decades of ruthlessness had crumbled into ash. Emma ran to the bedside. "You saved me," the child said. "Daddy said you were the bravest person he ever met. Are you going to leave now?" "Everyone else leaves." Sofia reached out with her unbroken arm and touched the child's hair. Her fingers shook. "No, sweetheart. I am not going to leave." Nico stepped forward, and his eyes held something that looked like worship and gratitude twisted together so tightly they had become one thing. "I want to tell you what we found," he said quietly. "I want to tell you about the sedan and the men inside it and the woman who orchestrated this attack. I want to tell you that justice is being prepared in ways you cannot imagine. But first, I need you to understand something." He knelt beside her bed. Enzo and Luca stood in the doorway, watching their employer, a man who had never knelt to anyone, drop to one knee beside a woman with blood still staining the bandages on her body. "You threw yourself in front of bullets for my daughter," Nico said. "You did not think. You did not calculate. You simply loved her enough to die." And in that moment, I understood that I had been living a half-life, moving through this world without understanding what it meant to have something worth protecting more than my own survival. Sofia's breath came shallow. "Nico. The man who shot you is Douglas Hale. You know this name. But what you do not know is that he was put into contact with Margaret Harrington, a woman who decided your existence was an inconvenience. She believed she could remove you and destabilize my custody of Emma. She was wrong. Within 6 hours, we had identified both of them. Within 12, evidence was compiled. Within 48, federal agents will arrive with warrants. Outside, the rain continued its work of washing the dry streets clean. The federal building's marble corridors hummed with the sound of destiny arriving on schedule. 2 days had passed since Sofia threw herself between bullets and Emma's small body. 2 days since the rain stopped and the city began its reckoning. Nico Calabrese sat in his office on the 42nd floor, the city spread beneath him like a board he had learned to control decades ago. His suit was black, tailored, worth more than Sofia's entire year of survival. On his desk lay photographs, phone records between Douglas Hale and Margaret Harrington, bank transfers showing $50,000 moving from Margaret's account to a shell company Douglas controlled, security footage of the meeting in Margaret's parking garage 3 weeks before the shooting. Enzo entered without knocking. Luca followed, both men carrying the weight of what they had discovered. They placed documents in front of their employer in careful stacks. Margaret paid him, Enzo said quietly. $50,000 to eliminate her problem. That problem was Sofia. Nico's fingers traced the bank transfer. His voice, when he spoke, was soft. Dangerously soft. She tried to kill my daughter. Yes, sir. She nearly killed Sofia. Yes, sir. He looked up, and his eyes had become something cold and absolute, like a winter that would never end. Bring them both in. Alive. The dawn arrived grey and unforgiving. 12 federal agents in tactical gear, their vests marked FBI in white letters, moved like ghosts through the corridors of Douglas Hale's apartment building. The battering ram struck the door once. It splintered. They poured through. Douglas was dragged from his bed in his underwear, his body trembling like a cornered animal's. He screamed as handcuffs bit into his wrists. I have rights. I know people. I know. But the people he thought he knew were being arrested simultaneously 3 blocks away. Officers Patterson and Cruz, corruption spread across their uniforms like a stain that could never be washed clean, were led from their precinct in restraints while their colleagues watched in silence. News cameras flashed outside Douglas's building. Nico had made one phone call to a federal contact, and that contact had made sure the media would be there. Douglas was led out past reporters, his face contorted, his boxers visible beneath the hands of agents. Every angle captured. Every moment broadcast. By noon, his face was on every screen in the city. In the federal building's interrogation room, Douglas sat across from a prosecutor with 30 years of felony experience. The evidence was arranged like an accusation, phone records, the rental agreement for the sedan, Margaret's credit card used to book it, video footage of Douglas meeting with Margaret, messages discussing the problem that needed removing. You can take a deal, the prosecutor said. 20 years instead of life. You testify that Margaret Harrington orchestrated this. That she wanted Sofia dead to destabilize Nico Calabrese's custody of his daughter. You help us build the case, you get 20. Douglas's hand shook as he reached for the pen. I'll testify, he whispered. I'll testify to everything. Margaret Harrington was arrested in her sitting room as she lifted a teacup to her lips. The porcelain froze halfway to her mouth. FBI agents in blue jackets filled her mansion, the one with marble floors and Persian rugs, the one where she had planned Sofia's death over afternoon wine. Margaret Claire Harrington, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder of a minor child, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. This is absurd, she said, her voice sharp like a blade. I am a Harrington. You cannot. But she could be touched, and she was. The handcuffs clicked. Cameras flashed outside as reporters shouted questions. Her gardeners watched from the lawn. Her staff stood frozen in doorways. Her society friends, women who had lunched with her, laughed with her, trusted her, stepped back as if cruelty was contagious. She was led to a black SUV, her face no longer composed, her carefully constructed empire crumbling in real time as the cameras captured every moment. Nico watched from his car across the street. Luca drove. Enzo sat in the passenger seat, a man who had worked for Nico for 15 years and had never seen him smile at an enemy's destruction. Nico did not smile now. How long? He asked. Douglas took the deal, Enzo said. 20 years minimum. Patterson and Cruz 15 each. Margaret refused to plead. She demanded a trial. The prosecutor says 40 years minimum, given the child victim element. The attempted murder of a 7-year-old carries enhancement penalties. Nico nodded once, a gesture of finality. Too quick would be too merciful, he said. He thought of Sofia still recovering in the hospital, her left shoulder wrapped in surgical bandages, her ribs taped where the 3rd bullet had cracked bone. He thought of Emma asking every single day when Sofia would come back. He thought of the moment he understood he loved Sofia, somewhere between her walking up his marble driveway to return a lost wallet and her throwing herself between his daughter and death. The slow burn had caught fire, but he would wait. She would heal. She would stand as his equal, and only then would he tell her what his heart now knew. 6 months later, on a dry April evening, early blooms replaced the dead leaves that had fallen that October night. Sofia Harper stood on the threshold of her own small house, not charity, a gift, or settlement. A home she had earned. She worked now managing security protocols for Nico's legitimate businesses, a position she had fought for and won through competence alone. Her debt was paid. Her children were safe. Douglas was in federal prison. The corrupt officers faced federal sentences that would consume the rest of their lives. Emma visited 3 times a week. The color had returned to the child's cheeks as her remission held, each test coming back clear, each day a victory against the cancer that had tried to steal her. Nico asked Sofia to walk with him through his gardens on an evening when the light turned golden and the air held the promise of summer. They talked about Emma's birthday party, about Sofia's daughter's school play, about ordinary things that felt like miracles given where they had started. Then Nico stopped walking. "There is something I need to say to you," he said. His voice, usually so controlled, held something vulnerable. Sofia waited. The city lights were beginning to glow below them, Los Angeles spreading in all directions like a kingdom he had ruled from shadow. But his eyes were fixed only on her. "6 months ago you threw yourself in front of bullets for my daughter. You asked for nothing in return. You have rebuilt your life on your own strength. You are not the desperate woman who walked up my driveway. You are not someone I am protecting. You are my equal." He paused, and in that pause was every moment of their convergence, every conversation, every small kindness, every time he had seen her as a person and not a problem. "I love you," he said. "I have loved you since the moment you refused to take my money, since you chose honor over survival, since you saw Emma as a child and not a bargaining chip. I am telling you now, when you do not need me, so you know this is choice. Not obligation. Not debt. Choice." Sofia's eyes filled with tears. "I have loved you since you understood why I had to return that wallet," she said. "Since you protected my children without asking permission. Since you knelt beside me on bloody marble and asked me to stay." They kissed as the sun descended below the horizon, the city stretching below them, cold replaced by warmth, despair replaced by the tender certainty of being chosen. Emma watched from a window with Sofia's 2 children, all 3 grinning, knowing something had shifted permanently in their small but growing family. Later, at Sunday dinner, Sofia held the child's first pair of shoes, the one she had kept from the shelter years ago, worn and small and precious. She had kept them to remember where she came from. But she was learning they also reminded her where she was going. "Family is not always bound by blood," she said softly, "but by those who choose to stay when the storm arrives." Around the table sat her children and Emma, Nico at the head with Sofia beside him, Enzo and Luca in the background now treated as family, laughter filling a house that had known only grief. If this story moved your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear that second chances exist. Subscribe so you do not miss what is coming tomorrow. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is accept help from someone who sees your worth when you have forgotten it yourself. Drop a like if you believe in redemption. We will see you in the next one.